CreepyCorner stories.
Hey everyone, welcome back to CreepyCorner stories. You know, diving into the dark web is always risky, but sharing these stories with you makes it worth it. I'm curious, where are you watching this from right now? Let me know in the comments below. I've noticed that these kinds of stories hit differently depending on where you are. It might even make the experience a little creepier. So, tell me, are you watching from the safety of your home or somewhere less secure? I got into an argument on Reddit. The guy sent me a dark web link. Now I can't sleep. This is probably the dumbest way I've ever gotten myself into trouble. And before anyone says, just ignore it. Trust me, I tried. It started last Thursday night. I was on my laptop after work, half watching a YouTube video, half scrolling Reddit. I ended up in a comment section on r/fast food, of all places, where people were arguing about those new spicy nuggets from McDonald's. Some folks were acting like they were borderline inedible, like eating them was some endurance challenge. I left a throwaway comment. They're fine, but if this is your definition of spicy, I feel bad for your taste buds. Harmless, a guy replied almost instantly. His username was The Signal Returns. He wrote, "You don't know what heat is. Not the kind that burns. Not yet." It was weirdly intense for a fast food thread, so I just gave him a sarcastic, "Okay, Gordon Ramsay" reply and moved on. I thought that was the end of it. It wasn't. Minutes later, I got a DM. Long, deliberate sentences. No emojis, no casual tone. It said, "If you want to feel something you'll never forget, click this link." And there it was. A strange URL that ended in .onion. I recognized it immediately. The dark web. I don't go there. I've heard enough stories about malware, scams, and nightmare fuel you can't unsee. I didn't click it. I didn't even reply. But instead of going away, he sent another message. "You live in the wrong place to be mouthing off." That made me pause. I told myself it was just some generic threat people throw out online. Then came the third message. "I see your street every day. You don't notice much, do you?" And this time, he attached a photo. It was my block, my driveway, my living room window. The blinds were halfway open, just like they'd been that afternoon when I was watching Netflix. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was an old Google Street View screenshot. But then I noticed my neighbor's car in the picture, a blue Subaru, and realized he sold it months ago. That's when the pit opened in my stomach. I blocked the account immediately. I closed Reddit, shut my laptop, and sat there in silence. I told myself I'd just been targeted by some creep who got lucky guessing a street that looked like mine. The next morning, I woke up to 3 Instagram follow requests from accounts I didn't recognize. No profile pics, no posts, just names like @HeatSource23 and @Watching from here. I deleted them without thinking. That night, things escalated. I was lying in bed, scrolling TikTok, when I got a Snapchat notification from an unfamiliar username. I almost ignored it, but curiosity got the better of me. It was a 3-second video. The camera was inside a McDonald's bathroom. Dim yellow tiles. The sound of a buzzing fluorescent light. The camera slowly tilted toward the mirror, but before you could see who was holding it, the screen went black. And then, in a whisper so close, it felt like it was in my ear, "You're next." The snap disappeared before I could replay it. I deleted Snapchat from my phone and tried to sleep. Around 3 a.m., I woke up to the sound of footsteps outside my window. Not heavy, stomping steps, just this slow, careful crunch of shoes on gravel. I stayed in bed, barely breathing, and listened. After maybe 30 seconds, it stopped. The next day at work, I was distracted the whole time. Every noise made me jump. When I got home, I noticed my trash bin had been dragged 3 feet closer to my driveway than where I left it. Could have been the wind, but the lid was flipped open like someone had been digging through it. That night, my curiosity got the better of me. I went into my email trash folder and found the DM from the Signal returns with the .onion link. Against my better judgment, I opened Tor on an old cheap laptop I barely use. The page was almost empty. Black background, white text in the middle. Welcome to the Signal. We see you. Then the page refreshed by itself. Now it said, check your window. Before I could process it, my bedroom light flickered. Just for a second. Then my laptop's webcam light turned on. I slammed it shut so hard, it made my ears ring. My heart was pounding so loud I could hear it. For the rest of the night, I sat on the couch with the TV on, every curtain closed. No laptop, no phone. But I swear, sometime after midnight, I heard my phone vibrate from inside my desk drawer. The drawer I hadn't opened since hiding it earlier. I didn't check it, and I haven't opened it since. I didn't touch my phone for almost 24 hours. When I finally gave in, I turned it on and immediately regretted it. There were 43 new notifications, none of them from actual friends. Most were from numbers I didn't recognize. No names, no saved contacts, just random sequences of digits, and all of them had sent me pictures. The first was a blurry shot of my apartment building, taken from across the street at night. The second was closer. My front door, the welcome mat tilted like someone had nudged it. The third was the inside of my living room. That one made me drop the phone onto the couch. I don't live with anyone. I lock my door every single time I come inside. I checked my security cam footage, but for some reason, the file for that entire day was just gone, like it had been deleted. At 8:32 p.m., one of the unknown numbers called me. I let it ring. Then they called again, and again. On the fourth call, I picked up. I didn't say anything, just listened. For the first 10 seconds, it was silence. Then I heard this faint, wet sound, like someone chewing something soft. And then, in this slow, deliberate voice, a man said, "You don't take out your trash on Tuesdays." Why? I hung up and threw the phone across the couch. I didn't move for a long time. Later that night, I went to get takeout. I just wanted to be around other people for a while. There's a 24-hour McDonald's a few blocks from me. When I walked in, I instantly noticed a man sitting in the corner booth, facing the entrance, hoodie up, head tilted slightly, like he'd been waiting for something. I tried to ignore him, ordered my food, sat down at a table, but every time I glanced over, I could see just enough of his face to know he was looking directly at me. When my number got called, I grabbed my bag and left. I didn't even make it to the parking lot before I heard footsteps behind me. I didn't turn around. I just walked faster. By the time I got to my building and unlocked the door, the street behind me was empty. I stayed awake until the sun came up. The next evening, there was a knock at my door. Not loud, just a slow, steady rhythm. I didn't answer. It went on for over a minute before stopping. When I finally worked up the courage to check the peephole, there was no one there, but taped to the door was a Polaroid picture. It was me, standing at my kitchen counter, taken from outside the window. I was wearing the exact hoodie I had on at that moment. That night, I didn't just hear footsteps outside. I heard the front door handle move. I called the police. They came, did a quick sweep, told me it was probably some local kids messing around. I showed them the Polaroid. They said they'd make a note of it. Around 2 a.m., my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. One new video message. It started with the camera pointed at the floor. White tile, smeared with something dark. The camera tilted up slowly. There was a chair in the middle of the room, its legs wrapped in duct tape. A thin stream of liquid, water maybe, was dripping from above, hitting the seat. Then the camera panned left, and I saw something I can't get out of my head. It was a man's face. His eyes were swollen shut. His mouth was gagged with silver duct tape. He was breathing fast, panicked, and then a hand, gloved, pale, shaking just slightly, reached into the frame, holding a pair of scissors. The video cut to black before anything else happened. I didn't sleep at all. By the next morning, every single one of my social media accounts had been logged out. When I tried to reset the passwords, each one said my recovery email had been changed. That night, the man in the hoodie was outside again. I saw him from my window, standing completely still under the streetlight. I shut the blinds. When I opened them 10 minutes later, he was gone. But there was something sitting on my doorstep. It was my old laptop, the one I'd used to open the link. The screen was cracked, and written across it in thick black marker were the words, "We're not finished." When I found the laptop on my doorstep, I didn't bring it inside. I just stood there staring at it. The cracked screen reflected the streetlight above, making the words scrawled across it, "We're not finished," look like they were glowing. I kicked it over with my foot, half expecting something to crawl out from underneath. Nothing did, but the bottom casing was warped and burned, like it had been pressed against something hot. I left it where it was and went inside. The air in my apartment felt wrong, heavier. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone had been there while I was gone. The first thing I noticed was that my coffee table had been moved about a foot closer to the couch. Not much, but I knew exactly where it used to be, because there was a faint circular stain from an old mug. In the kitchen, the salt shaker was lying on its side in the middle of the counter. In the bathroom, the toilet lid was up. Nothing was stolen. Nothing was broken. It was worse than that. It was subtle, intentional, just enough to make me second-guess my own memory. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. At around 4:30 a.m., I heard something from the hallway outside my apartment. A dragging sound. Slow, irregular. Then, a knock. Not on my door this time. On the apartment across from mine. Then again. Then my door. I froze. After maybe 20 seconds, the knocking stopped. I waited another minute before creeping over to the peephole. The hallway was empty, but when I looked down, there was something taped to my door. Another Polaroid. This one was... I don't even want to describe it. It was me, asleep in my bed. The angle was from the corner of my room, near the closet. I locked every door, every window, every possible entry point, but deep down, I knew it didn't matter. Whoever this was, they'd already been inside. The next day, I called my landlord, told him I needed the locks changed immediately. He said he could send someone in the morning. That night, I pushed my dresser in front of the door and slept in the corner of my bedroom with the kitchen knife. At 2:17 a.m., I woke up to the sound of my dresser scraping across the floor. Not fast, slow, like someone was pushing it from the other side. I didn't move. I couldn't move. Then I heard it, breathing, heavy, shallow, just inches from the door. After about a minute, it stopped. I stayed awake until sunrise. When the locksmith came, he found something jammed inside the old lock. A small strip of metal, almost like a piece of a paperclip, bent into a hook. He said it looked like someone had been trying to pick it. That evening, I decided to stay somewhere else. I packed a bag, called an Uber, and headed for a cheap motel on the edge of town. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I didn't post about it. I didn't even bring my main phone, just a burner I'd bought in cash that morning. I thought I was safe. Around 11 p.m., I went to get ice from the machine down the hall. When I came back, my motel room door was open, not all the way, just cracked an inch. I stood there for a solid minute, listening. Nothing. I slowly pushed it open. Everything looked normal until I saw the bed. The blankets had been pulled back. Lying on the pillow was a single object, the salt shaker from my kitchen. I backed out of the room, went straight to the front desk, and told them I needed a different room immediately. They moved me to the second floor. I double-locked the door, wedged a chair under the handle, and left the TV on all night. It didn't matter. At 3:46 a.m., I woke up to static. The TV had switched channels on its own. The remote was still on the nightstand, untouched. On the screen was a grainy black and white video feed of my own motel room. The angle was from the corner near the ceiling, except there was no camera there when I checked. I stared at the screen, frozen. Then, movement. In the video, the closet door slowly swung open. I grabbed my bag, left everything else, and bolted. I don't remember most of the drive home. All I remember is that when I finally walked into my apartment, there was a smell. Something metallic, faint, but unmistakable. On the kitchen counter was another Polaroid. This one wasn't of me. It was of the man from the McDonald's, the one in the hoodie, sitting in a chair, his face slack, his mouth open like he was unconscious. On the back, in neat block letters, it said, "Now you know how we find them." That's when it clicked. I wasn't just a target. I was being shown a process, a chain, and someone wanted me to see the next link. The Polaroid of the man in the hoodie sat on my counter all night. I didn't touch it. I didn't even go near it. Every time I glanced at it, I felt like his eyes, dull, half shut in that photo, were still aware somehow. I didn't sleep. My apartment felt like it had its own pulse, this slow, rhythmic pressure in the walls. At exactly 4:12 a.m., my landline, the one I never use, started ringing. I didn't want to answer it, but the sound was so piercing in the stillness, like it was designed to break my resolve. When I finally picked it up, I didn't hear breathing. I heard typing, the rapid, hollow clacking of a keyboard close to the receiver. Then, a voice I hadn't heard before. Female, calm, precise. "Your turn." Click. The next day, a package was waiting for me outside my door. Plain brown box. No return address. I thought about calling the police, but I knew what they'd say. I'd already heard the polite dismissal in their voices before. Inside the box was an old, scratched tablet. No charger. Taped to the back was a sticky note with a single sentence in block capitals. Press play. I powered it on. It was already charged, already unlocked, already queued to a single video file. No title, just a black thumbnail. I pressed play. The footage was from a dashcam. The car was driving through a quiet residential neighborhood I didn't recognize. After about a minute, it pulled over in front of a house. The driver got out. We only saw their back, a dark jacket, gloved hands, and walked to the door. They didn't knock. They didn't ring the bell. They took out a key and let themselves in. The camera stayed fixed on the empty street for a while, but faint sounds came from inside the house. Furniture scraping, a short, muffled yell, then silence. When the driver came back, they weren't alone. They were dragging someone, a man. His arms and legs were bound in duct tape, his head covered with a black bag. The driver shoved him into the back seat like it was routine. The video ended there. The tablet screen went black, and in its reflection, I saw movement behind me. I spun around, but the room was empty. That night, I pushed my dresser against the door again, triple-checked every lock, and kept every light in the apartment on. At 1:03 a.m., the lights flickered and stayed dim. Not out, just low enough to make every corner look deeper. From the hallway, I heard something scrape across the floor. Not a footstep. Metal against tile. A dragging sound. Then, from directly outside my door, "Help me." The voice was hoarse, strained, like the person hadn't spoken in days. I didn't move. The knocking started, soft, deliberate, almost polite. Then, between knocks, the voice again. "They'll make you do it if you don't open." I couldn't take it. I yelled at whoever it was to leave. No response. Just the knocking. Slower now. After maybe a minute, it stopped. I heard retreating footsteps. When I checked the peephole, the hallway was empty, except for an object sitting in front of my door. It was the Soul Shaker again. But this time, it wasn't empty. The inside was filled with tiny scraps of Polaroid photographs, all shredded into pieces small enough to pour out like sand. The next day, the tablet turned itself on while I was in the kitchen. The same video was playing, but now it had an extra 30 seconds at the end. This time, the driver turned toward the camera, pulling off the black hood they were wearing. It was me. I stared at the frozen frame on the tablet for what felt like hours, my face unmistakable, looking straight into the dashcam. No mask, no confusion. Like I'd been expecting the camera. It wasn't possible. I told myself it was doctored, some deep fake meant to screw with my head. But the longer I looked, the more I noticed details they couldn't have fabricated. The small scar on my left eyebrow from when I fell off my bike at 13. The chipped corner of my front tooth. The exact hoodie I was wearing right then. I wanted to throw the tablet out the window, but before I could move, the screen went black and a new message appeared. Final pickup, 2 a.m. location sent. I didn't see anything get sent to my phone, the burner, or my old one, but when I checked the Maps app on the burner, there was a single pinned address in the middle of an industrial district I'd never been to. No name, no description. The rational part of me said not to go. The other part, the one that had been chewed hollow by weeks of fear, paranoia, and exhaustion, knew I would. At 1:40 a.m., I was there. The street was dead silent, lit only by a single flickering lamppost. The building at the pinned location was a warehouse with rusted siding and a half-collapsed sign over the entrance. The front door wasn't locked. Inside, it smelled like metal and damp concrete. My footsteps echoed. The only light came from a single hanging bulb in the center of the room, swinging slowly. Beneath it was a chair. Someone was in the chair. They were bound at the wrists and ankles, head covered with a stained cloth sack. They shifted slightly when they heard me. I took a step closer, and the bulb above us stopped swinging. That's when the sound began. A slow, deliberate clicking, like someone tapping metal against metal. From the shadows behind me, a figure stepped forward. Black gloves, hoodie pulled low. The figure didn't speak. They just handed me something. A knife. The handle was warm, like it had been held for a long time. I dropped it. The sound echoed off the walls. The figure didn't flinch, didn't move to pick it up. Instead, they took something from their pocket, a Polaroid camera, and clicked it once. The flash lit up the room for a split second. When my vision cleared, the sack over the person's head was gone. It was the man in the hoodie from McDonald's. His eyes were open this time, wide, desperate, locked onto mine. From behind me, the clicking started again, faster now, more impatient. I backed away toward the door, but when I turned, it wasn't there anymore. Just wall. The warehouse had changed, somehow, closed itself in. The figure stepped forward and set the knife down on the chair's armrest. Then they stepped back into the shadows, leaving just me and the man in the chair under the swaying light. He tried to speak, but his voice was ragged, ruined. I caught fragments. Please. They'll make you. And then the light above us flickered and went out. For a few seconds, there was only darkness. Then, a strobe-like flash. Not from the bulb, but from somewhere else. Each burst of light showed a new image burned into my eyes. The man in the chair, mouth open in a silent scream. My own hands holding the knife. The floor beneath us, wet and dark. Faces in the shadows, dozens of them, watching. When the lights came back for good, the chair was empty. The ropes hung loose. On the floor in front of me was a Polaroid. It was me, standing over the chair, the knife buried in the man's chest. My hands were covered in something dark. I don't remember doing it. I don't remember moving. But as I stared at the photo, I realized my hand still felt warm. The clicking started again, right in my ear this time. I spun around, but there was no one there. Just the tablet, lying in the middle of the floor, screen glowing. A new video was queued up. I pressed play. It was live footage. My apartment. The camera was pointed at the window, from inside. And then I saw myself walk into the frame, sit down at my desk, and start typing. The tablet slipped from my hands. Somewhere behind me, a voice whispered, low and certain, "Your turn to send the link." The dark web horror film I watched wasn't a film. It was a live murder. I'm not one of those people who hangs out on the dark web every night for fun. Honestly, before all this, I barely knew how to even get on it. I'm just a regular guy who stays up way too late on his phone, scrolling through TikTok and Reddit, eating junk food I regret later. That's my routine. Nothing exciting. It was a Thursday night. I remember because I'd just gotten home from a late shift at work, and there was this weird, restless energy in me. I couldn't sleep. So, like always, I went on TikTok. Most of what I saw was the usual nonsense. Viral dance trends, cooking hacks. Some guy live streaming himself eating an absurd amount of McDonald's nuggets. But then, out of nowhere, I get this video on my For You page. Black background, glitchy red text, low, distorted music playing. The text said, "If you want to see something real, click before it's gone." No hashtags, no description, just a single comment pinned by the creator that said, "Don't share this link in the comments." The link wasn't a normal web address. It was long and messy, ending in .onion, something I'd only ever heard about in those dark web mystery YouTube videos people watch for fun. I almost scrolled past it. Almost. What caught my attention was the comment section. Most people were saying things like, "Yeah, right," or "Nice try, fed." But then there was this one comment from some random account. Watched it. Haven't slept in 2 days. No emojis. No lol. Just that. And the account was basically empty. No profile picture. No videos. No bio. I sat there debating whether I was dumb enough to click it. I'd heard about viruses, scams, and all the other horror stories. But curiosity is like a bad itch for me. I ended up downloading the Tor browser on my laptop. It's the only way you can even access an onion link. When I finally pasted it into the browser and hit enter, I expected some creepy forum or maybe a puzzle game like an ARG. But instead, the screen went completely black. Just one thing in the middle. A big red play button. No text. No menu. No ads. Nothing. And right before I could click it, my phone lit up. Unknown number. Unknown number. Don't watch this. No. Hi. No context. Just that. It froze me for a second because it wasn't a random pop-up message on my computer. It was my actual phone number. I checked the timestamp. It came through before I even touched the play button. My heart was pounding. I stared at the screen for maybe a full minute. Then I told myself it had to be some automated thing, like maybe the link did some weird data scrape and sent out creepy messages to scare people. And honestly, the more I thought about it, the more I convinced myself that's exactly what it was. A gimmick. So, yeah, I clicked play. It wasn't a video file. It was a live stream. At first, all I could see was the ground, gray concrete floor, scuffed up and wet in patches. The camera was shaky, like someone was walking. I could hear faint, dripping water echoing somewhere in the background. The sound was so sharp and crisp, it didn't feel like something shot on a movie set. Whoever was filming turned a corner into this dim, narrow hallway. The walls looked like damp cement. No paint, no signs, just a few pipes along the ceiling. The kind of place you'd only see in a basement you weren't supposed to be in. They stopped in front of a thick metal door with a sliding latch. I could hear them breathing as they slowly slid it open. Inside, there was a girl sitting on the floor, hands zip-tied in front of her, head down. She was wearing a green apron with a Starbucks logo on it, a black visor, and a name tag that I couldn't make out in the grainy feed. I sat there trying to process it. It looked too real to be a prank, but at the same time, I couldn't wrap my head around the idea that I might actually be watching something live. The camera moved closer. The girl looked up. Her eyes were red, her cheeks streaked with dried tears. She didn't speak, just stared straight at whoever was filming, her breathing heavy and shaky. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Turn it off now. I almost closed the window, but something kept me watching. The girl's lips started moving. I muted my TV, leaned in, and turned my laptop volume all the way up. She was whispering. I could barely make it out. but it sounded like they're making it look like a movie. Before I could process what that meant, the stream glitched, just for a second, and then I heard something that made every hair on my neck stand up. Footsteps, not in the video, behind me. I spun around so fast, my chair nearly tipped over. My apartment was dark, except for the light from my laptop screen. No one was there. I even checked my hallway and bathroom, my heart racing so hard I felt dizzy. When I came back, the stream was gone. The page just said, Error 404, content removed. That night, I barely slept. Every tiny noise in my apartment made me jump. At one point, I swear I heard someone walking in the hallway, outside my door. Slow, deliberate steps. But when I looked through the peephole, it was empty. The next morning, I checked TikTok. The video that led me to the link was gone. Not deleted, gone. The account didn't even exist anymore. And then I saw something that made me feel sick. On my local newsfeed, there was an article about a missing Starbucks employee. The photo showed the same girl I'd seen in the video. Same apron, same visor. It said she was last seen leaving work at 10 p.m. the night before. That's when it hit me. I didn't watch some random horror short. I saw her, alive, somewhere she shouldn't have been. And I think whoever texted me knows I saw it. If you want me to tell you what happened next, I can, because this is only the beginning. Things got a lot worse after that. The morning after I saw the girl in the Starbucks uniform, I kept telling myself it had to be some twisted indie project. Maybe one of those guerrilla horror films where they make everything look real to get reactions. But that theory fell apart when I saw the missing person article. The news said her name was Rebecca Tran, 24 years old, worked at a Starbucks a few miles from me. The last confirmed sighting was her clocking out at 9:57 p.m. The part that chilled me wasn't just that I'd seen her alive after that. It was the timestamp on the live stream. It was 11:04 p.m. I should have gone to the police. I should have told someone, but I didn't. Partly because I didn't think they'd believe me, and partly because I was scared of what might happen if I told. I kept my laptop shut all day, didn't open TikTok, didn't open Tor. But that night, while I was lying in bed, I got another text from the same unknown number. Unknown number. Did you like the first act? The wording made me feel sick, like I'd been part of some performance. Then another text came in, seconds later. Unknown number. Don't look outside. I hadn't even thought about looking outside until they said that. But now, of course, I had to. My blinds were half open, so I just tilted my head enough to peek out the window. Across the street, under the orange glow of the street lamp, was a man standing perfectly still. Black hoodie, dark jeans, hands in his pockets. He wasn't looking at his phone, wasn't smoking, just staring. I dropped to the floor so he couldn't see me, heart pounding like it was going to punch through my chest. I crawled over to the blinds and slowly tilted them down until there was just the tiniest gap. He was still there, but his head was tilted slightly upward now, not looking at my window, looking at my unit number. I didn't sleep that night. By the time the sun came up, he was gone, but my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Ready for Act 2. Attached was a link, not to Tor this time, just a regular URL. Against every ounce of better judgment, I tapped it. It loaded into another live stream window, but this time there was no shaky walking. The camera was already set up, pointed straight at a chair in the middle of a room. The chair was wooden, old, like something you'd see in a thrift store. The walls were bare concrete again, and the only light came from a single bulb swinging slightly overhead. They dragged someone into frame. Not Rebecca. A man, maybe late 30s, hands tied behind his back, with duct tape over his mouth. He was wearing a faded gray McDonald's crew shirt, like he'd just gotten off a shift. The camera didn't move. No cuts, no edits. Just still. I could hear his breathing, quick and ragged. Then, out of the corner of the frame, a hand appeared, pale, thin, with these long, twitchy fingers, holding a pair of scissors. They weren't clean. The blades were stained a deep brown. They started cutting away the man's shirt, slow and methodical, until his chest was bare. His skin was covered in goosebumps from the cold. And then, without warning, the scissors were pressed into his shoulder, not stabbing, just pressing until the skin dimpled. The man squirmed in the chair, muffled screams under the tape. The scissors moved down his arm, dragging along the skin in a deliberate, slow scrape, leaving a thin, glistening red line. I wanted to click away, but my body wouldn't listen. My pulse was in my ears, my throat tight. I kept telling myself it was fake, but the trembling in his breath, the way his eyes darted wildly, that wasn't acting. The camera operator leaned down into view for the first time. It wasn't the man in the hoodie from outside. This guy's face was wrong, in a way I can't explain. Stretched smile, glassy eyes that didn't blink enough. He whispered something directly into the man's ear, but the mic didn't pick it up. And then he looked at the camera, not like an actor breaking the fourth wall, not like a director making a point. He looked right at me. That's when I realized there was no way they could know I was watching a public stream, unless it wasn't public, unless this was being sent to me directly. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. You understand the rules now. The man in the chair started thrashing. The pale guy walked out of frame and came back holding a clear plastic bag. Without hesitation, he pulled it over the man's head and cinched it tight around his neck with duct tape. I could hear the plastic stretching as the man inside fought for air. The bulb above swayed faster from the movement, making shadows whip around the room. It went on for longer than I can even write about, until the chair finally stopped shaking. The pale man didn't take the bag off. He just walked up to the camera, put his finger to his lips, and tilted his head in that same slow, unnatural way the man outside my window had done. The stream cut out. My screen went black. I sat there frozen, staring at my own reflection in the monitor, trying to convince myself it wasn't real, that it couldn't be real. But then my phone buzzed one more time. Unknown. Number. Your turn to choose the next one. Attached was a photo. A grainy shot of me from behind, taken through my apartment window. I've been keeping my blinds shut ever since, but the texts haven't stopped, and the acts are getting worse. I think they're building towards something. Something where I'm not just a viewer anymore. I didn't leave my apartment for 2 days after that stream. I kept the blinds closed, taped over the peephole, and shoved a chair under the doorknob, like that would actually stop someone if they really wanted in. I didn't answer the phone, didn't text friends back. I told myself if I ignored it, maybe they'd get bored and move on to someone else. But on the third night, my phone lit up again. No text this time. just a video file. It started with the sound of traffic. You know that distant hum you hear when cars are passing a few streets over. The camera was in the back of a moving vehicle, pointed through the windshield. City lights blurred by. Whoever was holding it had their radio off. No talking, just the low rumble of the road. After a few minutes, the car slowed and turned into a strip mall parking lot. My stomach dropped when I recognized the place. It was the grocery store I go to every week. The camera zoomed in on the entrance. People were coming and going, moms with kids, old guys pushing carts, a teenager in a red hoodie skating past the doors. The lens followed the teenager for a moment, then panned to a woman coming out of the store. It took me a second to recognize her. Long brown hair, oversized hoodie, canvas tote bag. Her name was Emily. We dated for about a year in college. Haven't spoken in a while, but we still follow each other on Instagram. She still lives in the city. The person filming didn't approach her. They just sat there in the parked car, filming her load groceries into her trunk. When she drove away, the camera followed. The video cut to a residential street, quiet, tree-lined, with dim yellow street lamps. The camera stayed back a few car lengths as Emily pulled into a driveway. She got out, unlocked her front door, and disappeared inside. The person filming didn't move, didn't drive away. They just waited. 20 minutes passed, then 30. Nothing but the faint creak of the camera operator shifting in their seat. Finally, the car door opened. The view swayed as they got out, crossed the street, and walked up to Emily's front door. They didn't knock. Instead, they pulled something out of their jacket, a tiny toolkit. I watched as they knelt down, worked on the lock, and within seconds, the door swung open. The rest of the video was inside her house. The camera moved slowly, room by room, like they were making sure she didn't hear them. You could hear her faintly in the background, music playing in another room, the sound of her phone buzzing on a countertop. The camera paused at a doorway. Through a crack, I could see Emily in the kitchen, putting away groceries. Her back was to the camera. The operator reached into their pocket again, this time pulling out a pair of black gloves. They put them on, flexed their fingers once, and stepped inside. The camera didn't follow into the kitchen. It stayed in the hallway, facing the wall. The sound of footsteps on tile. A brief pause, then Emily's voice. Light, casual at first. "Hello? Who's there?" There was a sudden scrape of metal on the counter, a muffled gasp, then the sound of something heavy hitting the floor. The camera turned back into the kitchen just enough to show Emily on her knees, one hand clutching her side. Her other hand was up like she was trying to shield herself. Her hoodie was darkening on the left side, slowly at first, then faster. I froze the video there. I couldn't watch her face change, but it autoplayed anyway. The operator stepped forward and crouched beside her. They set the camera down on the counter, so it was aimed down at both of them. I could see gloved hands grip her jaw, tilting her head toward the lens. She looked right into it. Her lips moved, forming a single word. I couldn't hear it clearly, but I swear it sounded like my name. Then her eyes lost focus. The hands let her head drop. They reached for the tote bag on the floor, pulled out one of the groceries, a bag of apples, and calmly placed it on the counter before picking the camera back up. The final shot was the front of my apartment building, taken from across the street. I didn't leave my apartment for the next 3 days. I blocked the unknown number, changed my phone plan, even bought a cheap flip phone from a gas station just so I'd have something they didn't have access to. But that didn't matter. On the 4th night, I woke up to my laptop open on my desk, the one I'd kept shut and unplugged since that first stream. The screen was black, except for a single line of text in white. Act 4, 2 a.m. Don't be late. The clock in the corner read 1:57. I don't know how to explain what happened next without sounding insane. At exactly 2 a.m., my laptop camera light flicked on. I hadn't touched anything. The black screen dissolved into another video feed. This time, the camera wasn't moving. It was mounted high up in a corner, looking down at a room I'd never seen before. Dark wood floors, bare walls, one single chair in the middle. A man was already in it, head covered with a black cloth bag. The sound of footsteps echoed from somewhere off-screen, slow, deliberate. Whoever was approaching stepped into frame, holding something I couldn't identify at first. When they got closer, I saw it was a hammer. They didn't rush. They didn't say anything. They just stood behind the man in the chair for a long moment, like they were waiting for me to process what was about to happen. And then the bag came off. It wasn't some stranger this time. It was my landlord. The black cloth bag was yanked off, and there he was, my landlord. His hair was matted, his face shiny with sweat. There was duct tape across his mouth, his wrists bound tight behind the chair. His eyes were wide and darting, not in confusion, but in recognition. He knew the camera was on him, and I knew, without question, that he knew I was watching. The man behind him, I couldn't see his face clearly. He was wearing this featureless rubber mask, the kind you'd find in a hardware store, Halloween aisle, except it had no holes where the eyes should have been, just smooth plastic. He set the hammer on the floor in front of the chair with a deliberate clink and walked around to face my landlord. He knelt, resting both gloved hands on the man's knees. For a few seconds, neither moved. The landlord's breathing grew heavier, faster. The man in the mask stayed perfectly still, like he was studying an animal before slaughter. Then, without warning, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a thin metal spike. Not a knife, not a tool I recognized, but something cold and sharp enough that the reflection from the overhead light flickered along its length. The masked man stood, walked around behind the chair again, and pressed the spike against the base of the landlord's skull, right where the spine meets the head. The landlord jerked forward violently, his muffled scream rasping under the duct tape. The masked man didn't push the spike in. Not yet. He just held it there, letting the tension fill the room like static. My phone buzzed on the desk beside me. I didn't want to look away from the feed, but I glanced anyway. It was a new number, not the old one. Message. Choose a number between 1 and 3. That was it. No explanation. I didn't answer. I set the phone down, my hands shaking, eyes glued to the laptop screen. 30 seconds passed. Another buzz. Message. Choose, or he loses both. I typed back. Both what? The reply came instantly. Message. Eyes. On the stream, the masked man tilted the landlord's head back, holding the spike horizontally now, tapping it lightly against his temple, like he was waiting for a cue. I froze. I couldn't pick. Every scenario in my head ended the same way. The phone buzzed again. Message. 2. The masked man stopped tapping and raised his other hand, holding up 2 fingers toward the camera. Then he moved in front of my landlord, gripping his jaw with one hand while positioning the spike in the other. It wasn't fast. It wasn't a sudden lunge. It was slow, deliberate pressure until the first wet, horrible pop sounded through my laptop speakers. I couldn't breathe. I wanted to look away, but my body was locked in place. The landlord's muffled shrieks were like an animal's. Panicked, primal, the kind of sound that bypasses your brain and goes straight to the spine. The masked man dropped the ruined mess that used to be his left eye onto the floor with a quiet thud, and then looked straight into the camera again. The second one was worse. The landlord had no strength left to fight, and the sound, God, it was quieter, wetter, almost a squelch. When it was done, the masked man stepped back, letting the landlord slump forward, chest heaving in ragged, uneven gasps. I thought it was over. I thought maybe they'd stop there. But the masked man walked off screen and returned with a tall, clear container filled with dark liquid. He knelt, pried the landlord's mouth open, and poured it in. The landlord convulsed instantly, gagging, coughing, his body jerking so hard the chair legs scraped across the floor. I didn't know what it was at first, until I saw the way it stained his teeth. Black. Oil. Motor oil. He tried to spit it out, but the masked man clamped a hand over his mouth and tilted his head back, forcing him to swallow. The sound was sickening. Thick gulps broken up by choked gasps for air. Then, for the first time in any of these acts, the masked man spoke. It was quiet, distorted by something electronic, but the words were crystal clear. You're next. He didn't say it to the landlord. He said it to me. The stream cut to black instantly. No fade out, no glitch, just nothing. I slammed the laptop shut and paced my apartment, clutching my phone. My mind kept repeating those words over and over until I felt nauseous. I wanted to run, pack a bag, drive anywhere, but some part of me knew it wouldn't matter. They knew where I lived. They'd been inside before. Running would just make it easier for them to catch me alone. I didn't sleep. Not for the rest of the night. Not the next day. I sat with my back to the wall, staring at the front door, jumping at every creak from the building settling. Around midnight, the messages started again. Same number. Message. Act 5. Tomorrow. 3:15 a.m. Be ready. No other details. And then a second message came through. Message. This time, you hold the camera. If you want me to go into part 5, I will. But that's where everything changes, and where I stopped being just a viewer. What happens in Act 5 isn't something I think I can explain without taking something from the person listening. The night they told me Act 5 was mine, I didn't even try to sleep. I sat in my kitchen with every light on, staring at the clock. 2 a.m. passed, then 2:30. My phone stayed silent, and for a moment I convinced myself they'd changed their minds. But at exactly 3:15 a.m., the knock came. It wasn't loud, just 3 soft taps, not at my door, at my window. I froze, every muscle in my body locked. Slowly, I turned toward the sound. The blinds were shut, but the thin sliver at the bottom glowed faintly, the streetlight outside catching on something close. Then, the knock again, this time, softer. I didn't want to look. I really, truly didn't. But something in me, that same curiosity that had gotten me into this mess, made me crawl forward and peel the blinds back just enough. A face was pressed against the glass, Not masked, not painted, just pale skin, eyes so wide the whites caught the light, lips curled in the kind of smile that isn't joy, it's possession. And in their hand was a phone. On the screen was a message in giant block letters. Come outside. I shook my head. I mouthed, no. The smile didn't change. They tapped the glass with one finger, slow and deliberate, then held up the phone again. This time, the text read, we're already inside. Before I could react, I heard it. The soft creak of a floorboard from the other side of my apartment. I ran to my bedroom, grabbed my keys and wallet, and bolted for the front door. But when I yanked it open, there was a small cardboard box sitting on the doormat. No one in the hall, no footsteps, just the box. I kicked it. It was light, something shifting inside with a dry scrape. Against all logic, I crouched down and opened it. Inside was a GoPro camera. The red light on top was already blinking. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Message. Put it on. Start recording. Bring it to the corner of 8th and Pine. I should have smashed it. Should have called the cops. Should have done anything but what I did, which was strap the thing to my chest, grab my jacket, and step into the cold. The streets were empty. My breath came out in white clouds. Every sound seemed magnified. The crunch of gravel under my shoes, the hum of a streetlight buzzing overhead. At 8th and Pine, there was a black van parked under the only lamp that wasn't flickering. The back doors were open. A figure stepped out. I recognized the posture instantly. The same masked man from the other streams. He didn't speak, didn't gesture, just stood there until I walked closer. Inside the van was a chair. Someone was already tied to it. A black cloth bag over their head. The masked man handed me a box cutter. The masked man dropped the ruined mess that used to be his left eye onto the floor with a quiet thud, and then looked straight into the camera again. The second one was worse. The landlord had no strength left to fight, and the sound, God, it was quieter, wetter, almost a squelch. When it was done, the masked man stepped back, letting the landlord slump forward, chest heaving in ragged, uneven gasps. I thought it was over. I thought maybe they'd stop there, but the masked man walked off screen and returned with a tall, clear container filled with dark liquid. He knelt, pried the landlord's mouth open, and poured it in. The landlord convulsed instantly, gagging, coughing, his body jerking so hard the chair legs scraped across the floor. I didn't know what it was at first, until I saw the way it stained his teeth. Black. Oil. Motor oil. He tried to spit it out, but the masked man clamped a hand over his mouth and tilted his head back, forcing him to swallow. The sound was sickening. Thick gulps broken up by choked gasps for air. Then, for the first time in any of these acts, the masked man spoke. It was quiet, distorted by something electronic, but the words were crystal clear. You're next. He didn't say it to the landlord. He said it to me. The stream cut to black instantly. No fade out, no glitch. Just nothing. I slammed the laptop shut and paced my apartment, clutching my phone. My mind kept repeating those words over and over until I felt nauseous. I wanted to run, pack a bag, drive anywhere, but some part of me knew it wouldn't matter. They knew where I lived. They'd been inside before. Running would just make it easier for them to catch me alone. I didn't sleep. Not for the rest of the night. Not the next day. I sat with my back to the wall, staring at the front door, jumping at every creak from building settling. Around midnight, the messages started again. Same number. Message. Act 5. Tomorrow. 3:15 a.m. Be ready. No other details. And then a second message came through. Message. This time, you hold the camera. If you want me to go into part 5, I will. But that's where everything changes, and where I stopped being just a viewer. What happens in Act 5 isn't something I think I can explain without taking something from the person listening. The night they told me Act 5 was mine, I didn't even try to sleep. I sat in my kitchen with every light on, staring at the clock. 2 a.m. passed, then 2:30. My phone stayed silent, and for a moment I convinced myself they'd changed their minds. But at exactly 3:15 a.m., the knock came. It wasn't loud, just 3 soft taps. Not at my door, at my window. I froze, every muscle in my body locked. Slowly, I turned toward the sound. The blinds were shut, but the thin sliver at the bottom glowed faintly, the streetlight outside catching on something close. Then, the knock again, this time softer. I didn't want to look. I really, truly didn't. But something in me, that same curiosity that had gotten me into this mess, made me crawl forward and peel the blinds back just enough. A face was pressed against the glass, not masked, not painted, just pale skin, eyes so wide the whites caught the light, lips curled in the kind of smile that isn't joy, it's possession. And in their hand was a phone. On the screen was a message in giant block letters. Come outside. I shook my head. I mouthed, no. The smile didn't change. They tapped the glass with one finger, slow and deliberate, then held up the phone again. This time, the text read, "We're already inside." Before I could react, I heard it. The soft creak of a floorboard from the other side of my apartment. I ran to my bedroom, grabbed my keys and wallet, and bolted for the front door. But when I yanked it open, there was a small cardboard box sitting on the doormat. No one in the hall, no footsteps, just the box. I kicked it. It was light, something shifting inside with a dry scrape. Against all logic, I crouched down and opened it. Inside was a GoPro camera. The red light on top was already blinking. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Message. Put it on. Start recording. Bring it to the corner of 8th and Pine. I should have smashed it. Should have called the cops. Should have done anything but what I did, which was strap the thing to my chest, grab my jacket, and step into the cold. The streets were empty. My breath came out in white clouds. Every sound seemed magnified. The crunch of gravel under my shoes, the hum of a streetlight buzzing overhead. At 8th and Pine, there was a black van parked under the only lamp that wasn't flickering. The back doors were open. A figure stepped out. I recognized the posture instantly. The same masked man from the other streams. He didn't speak, didn't gesture, just stood there until I walked closer. Inside the van was a chair. Someone was already tied to it. A black cloth bag over their head. The masked man handed me a box cutter. I found a serial killer's live stream on the dark web. He was wearing my brother's clothes. I've read enough on r/NOSLEEP to know how this is going to sound. Dramatic, fake, like some creepypasta someone cooked up in a dorm room. But I'm not here to impress you. I'm here because what I saw and what's been happening since won't leave my head. I don't even know if I'm safe right now. I'm 20. I live in a one-bedroom apartment above a laundromat in a small Illinois town just outside Chicago. It's not glamorous. The walls are thin, the hallway light flickers like a horror cliché, and the whole place smells faintly of Tide, no matter how many candles I burn. I moved here after my brother Nathan went missing 3 months ago. I needed to get away from my parents' house. The emptiness there was suffocating. It started on a Thursday night. I was half asleep, lying in bed, scrolling TikTok. I was deep into that 2 a.m. feed where the algorithm starts serving you the weird stuff. Old conspiracy clips, lost media hunts, creepy urban legends. Then one video popped up. Black background, distorted voice, text over the screen saying, "Do not click this link after midnight unless you want to see something you'll regret." The guy in the video was talking about an invite-only streaming forum on the dark web. Normally I'd laugh it off, but the comment section wasn't full of trolls or obvious bots. It was people saying things like, "I saw it last night and I can't sleep," or "I wish I never clicked. I should have scrolled past. I didn't. I've messed around with Tor before, mostly out of curiosity. This time, I opened it up, plugged in the .onion link from the TikTok, and started browsing. Most of it was the usual deep web garbage, dead message boards, weird chat rooms, marketplaces full of scams. Then I found a page called Live Experiences. No description, just a single black thumbnail with the word live in red. I hovered for a second, then I clicked. At first, I thought it was a normal webcam feed. The quality was awful, like it was filmed on a decade-old phone. The camera pointed at a desk in a dimly lit room. A man sat there, shoulders hunched, wearing a black hoodie. I could hear a faint humming sound in the background. Not static, not machinery. More like the low buzz of a vending machine in a quiet hallway. Then he leaned forward. The hoodie had a small bleach stain on the sleeve. My brain registered it instantly, like a punch in the gut. Nathan had a hoodie exactly like that. Same brand, same black fabric, same stain from when he spilled cleaner at work at the McDonald's off Main Street. I remembered teasing him about it. Nathan's hoodie was gone when we cleaned out his room. I told myself it was a coincidence. It had to be. The man didn't look at the camera. He just mumbled quietly, like he was talking to himself. I could only catch fragments. They'll figure it out soon. Too late now. Every so often he'd stop, tilt his head, and just listen. The pauses felt wrong, like there was something in the room with him we couldn't see. Then he reached under the desk and pulled out a Polaroid photo. Even in the terrible resolution, I knew what I was looking at. Nathan, my brother. His head was tilted slightly, like someone had called his name mid-laugh, but his eyes were empty, glossy. The chat on the side was active, but not in the normal spammy way you see on Twitch. Every message was short, direct. "Do it. We're watching. Next one." I tried to type something, anything, but the chat wouldn't let me. There wasn't even a text box for me. Just that steady trickle of commands from whoever they were. That's when I noticed the viewer count. 23. I don't know why that number stuck out to me, but it did. I kept staring at it, and this awful feeling settled in my chest. Like each one of those 23 viewers was more involved than just watching. The man put the Polaroid down, reached out of frame, and picked up something heavy. I couldn't see it. My laptop fan started to whine, and for a second I thought my Wi-Fi was lagging, but then the humming in the background got louder. And that's when I realized something. That sound wasn't coming from his stream. It was coming from inside my building. I muted the video, but the sound didn't stop. It was faint, muffled by the walls, but definitely close, like down the hall close. The man froze, mid-motion. Slowly, too slowly, he turned his head toward the camera. His face stayed in shadow, but I swear I could see the corners of his mouth move, like he was smiling. The stream cut to black. I slammed my laptop shut and just sat there, heart pounding. The humming sound kept going for another minute, then faded, like someone walking away. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I checked the link again. The page was gone. No live experiences, no black thumbnail, just a 404 error. I tried telling myself I'd imagined it, that I was just spiraling because of Nathan, but I couldn't shake the bleach stain from my head. And here's the thing that's been messing with me ever since. Last night, when I came home from class, my apartment door was unlocked. Nothing was stolen. Nothing was out of place. Except on my kitchen counter, there was a single Polaroid, face down. I stood in the doorway, staring at that photograph, like it was something alive. It was face down on my kitchen counter. No envelope, no note, nothing. Just the glossy white back reflecting the weak light from my overhead bulb. I didn't touch it for at least a minute. My brain was doing that thing where it tries to convince you you're overreacting. Maybe it's from a friend. Maybe someone just left it here by accident. But I don't have friends who drop by. Nobody even knows my spare key location except my landlord. The door had been unlocked. I could still smell that faint chemical scent of the laundromat below. Only this time it was mixed with something metallic. When I finally picked it up, the first thing I noticed was that the edges were smudged, like someone had held it tightly in dirty hands before setting it down. My palms were sweating. I flipped it over. Nathan. Except not the Nathan I remembered. His hair was longer, greasy, clinging to the sides of his face. His skin looked wrong, pale, almost gray, like all the blood had drained from it. His lips were parted just enough to see his teeth. There was something in the background, blurry, but it looked like brick walls and a single metal chair. And his hoodie, the same black one with the bleach stain, was gone. He was shirtless. Around his neck was something that looked like rope. I dropped it on the counter and just stood there, trying to breathe. Every sound in the apartment suddenly felt amplified. The hum of my fridge, the faint footsteps from the laundromat below, the occasional creak of the pipes. I grabbed my phone and called the police. I told them someone had been in my apartment, that they'd left a threatening photograph. They sent 2 officers who barely looked around before giving me the standard, "We'll make a report." No fingerprints, no real questions, just a pitying look, like they'd already decided I was some paranoid college kid who missed his brother too much. After they left, I locked the door, wedged a chair under the handle, and sat on my bed scrolling through my laptop. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it when I saw the tab I'd left open from the night before. The live experiences page was back. No thumbnail this time, just a red timer counting down from 00:23:59. Every instinct in me screamed to close it, but I didn't. I stared at that timer for nearly an hour, unable to look away. I think part of me needed to see, to know. When the timer hit 0, the page didn't reload. It just faded to black, and then the stream started. The same guy, same room. This time, the lighting was a little better, like he wanted me to see more. His hoodie was gone. He was wearing a white undershirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows. There was something behind him now. A chair. And in that chair, my brother. Alive. At least I think he was. His head low to the side, but his chest moved just barely enough to notice. His wrists were bound to the arms of the chair with duct tape. His ankles too. His face was bruised. One of his eyes was swollen shut. The man in the white shirt didn't acknowledge him at first. He just looked into the camera for a long time. It wasn't a normal look. It was like he was studying me through the screen, figuring out exactly what I would do. The chat was active again. Start. Closer. Make him watch. Then, without breaking eye contact with the camera, he wheeled Nathan's chair closer until it was right in front of the desk. He placed his hand on my brother's head and tilted it toward the lens. Nathan's lips moved. I think he was saying my name. I didn't even notice I was crying until my keyboard started getting wet. The man pulled something out from under the desk. A small black object. At first, I thought it was a remote. Then I realized it was a Polaroid camera. He pressed it against Nathan's face, angled it just so, and took a picture. The sound of the film ejecting made my whole body tense. Then he did something that made my stomach turn. He reached off screen, pulled a roll of duct tape into view, and taped the fresh photo to Nathan's chest. The chat went wild. Perfect. Again. Next one for him. For him. I didn't understand until the man reached under the desk again, rummaged for a second, and then held something up to the camera. A key. It wasn't just any key. It was my apartment key. He placed it on the desk, leaned forward, and said the first and only words I've heard him speak directly. 23. I slammed the laptop shut so hard the screen went black before it closed all the way. I couldn't breathe. My chest felt like it was collapsing. The humming sound started again. This time, it wasn't faint. It wasn't distant. It was coming from right outside my door. The humming stopped. I didn't realize how loud my own breathing had gotten until it did. It was the only sound left in the apartment. Then came the knock. Not a frantic, desperate knock. Just 3 slow taps, like the person on the other side wasn't in a hurry at all. I stayed completely still on my bed, clutching my phone so tightly my knuckles hurt. My first thought was to call the cops again, but after last night, I knew they wouldn't do anything unless someone was already bleeding. The knocking came again. 3 taps, each one slightly harder than the last, and then a faint scrape, like something being slid across the floor right up against my door. I didn't move until I heard footsteps going down the hall, heavy at first, then fading, then completely gone. When I finally got the courage to check, I pushed the chair away from the door and opened it just enough to peek out. There was a package sitting on the hallway carpet. No address, no label. Just a cardboard box sealed with duct tape. I don't know what possessed me to bring it inside, but I did. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely get the tape off. Inside was a thick layer of crumpled newspaper, the pages stiff with something that smelled faintly of copper. Beneath that was a small black flip phone, old scratched screen, no charger. It buzzed in my hand. When I opened it, there was no message, no missed call, just one new video file titled, "Look." I pressed play. It was a grainy recording, handheld, moving through what looked like a dimly lit stairwell. The person filming descended slowly, each step creaking under their weight. When they reached the bottom, the camera panned to a heavy metal door. On the other side of that door was Nathan. He was still in the same chair I'd seen in the live stream, but now his head was upright. His mouth was gagged with a strip of duct tape. His eyes were wide and wet, not from crying, but from the raw animal kind of fear you can't fake. The camera zoomed in on his face, then panned slowly down to his bare feet. That's when I saw it. Someone had carved something into the skin of his ankle. Numbers 2, 3. The video ended abruptly. The phone buzzed again in my hand. This time, it was a text message. "Your number 24. I dropped the phone onto the counter like it was on fire and stumbled back until I hit the wall. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak in the building made me flinch. The glow from my laptop screen in the corner felt like a set of eyes staring at me, waiting for me to open it. I left it closed. At some point, exhaustion must have taken over because I woke up on the floor with the faintest trace of daylight coming through the blinds. And there, taped to the inside of my bedroom window, was another Polaroid. This one wasn't of Nathan. It was of me, lying exactly as I was now, on the floor, in the same position, mouth slightly open in sleep. Someone had been in my apartment while I was out cold. They hadn't just been in my apartment. They'd stood in my bedroom, close enough to take a picture. I ripped it off the glass and shoved it in a drawer, but my hands wouldn't stop trembling. My phone buzzed again. Same black flip phone. A new video. This time, it wasn't Nathan. It was the laundromat below me. Empty. Silent. The person filming walked between the rows of machines. The only sound, the click of their shoes on the tile. They stopped in front of the staircase that leads up to my apartment. They didn't go up. They just stood there for a long time, filming the bottom of the stairs. Then, slowly, they turned the camera around to reveal their face. It was the man from the live stream. Only now, there was no hood, no shadows, just his pale, expressionless face, framed by short, dark hair. His eyes were flat, empty, like he was looking through the lens and straight into me. The video ended, but before I could even put the phone down, my laptop, which I swear I hadn't touched, chimed with a notification. The live experiences stream had gone online. I didn't want to watch. I knew I shouldn't watch, but my hands moved on their own, clicking open the page. There was no timer this time, just a live feed. It was my apartment, from inside. The camera was angled from the corner near the ceiling, showing my entire living room and kitchen. I was right there in the frame, hunched over my laptop, watching myself in real time. Behind me, in the blurry background of the stream, the door to my bedroom began to slowly open. The stream on my laptop showed the door to my bedroom slowly inching open. In my actual apartment, I didn't move. My heart was pounding so hard, I could hear it in my ears, drowning out everything else. On the screen, the blurry crack in the door widened until I could make out the faint outline of a figure standing inside the darkened room. The viewers in the stream chat began posting again. "Don't move. Stay still. We're watching you both now." I turned my head slightly toward my bedroom. The door here was exactly as it was in the feed, half open. Only now I could hear it too. The slow, deliberate shift of weight on the wooden floorboards. I didn't have any weapons. My phone was on the counter next to the black flip phone, which buzzed again like it was mocking me. The man stepped into the frame on my laptop. It was him. Pale skin, short dark hair, wearing that same white undershirt from the second stream. But now I could see the fine details. Faint scars running along his forearms, his fingernails chewed down until the skin was raw. He didn't look at the camera. He didn't look at me. He looked at the chair I'd wedged under the apartment door earlier and smiled. The chat started spamming. Go closer. Touch him. Make him see. He took a slow step toward me. In the stream, I could see myself sitting frozen at my laptop, my shoulders tense, my face pale. And in the corner of the screen, something caught my eye. The timestamp. It was running 3 seconds ahead of real life. The stream wasn't showing me now. It was showing me what was about to happen. I glanced back at the screen just in time to see the man's hand on my shoulder in the video. 3 seconds later, in real life, I felt it. Cold fingers gripping me with a pressure that was somehow gentle and inescapable at the same time. I didn't scream. My voice caught somewhere in my chest. He leaned down so close, I could smell him. That same metallic tang I'd noticed in the box earlier, mixed with something stale, like damp wood. On the stream, his other hand came into view, holding something shiny. 3 seconds later, in real life, the same object slid into my peripheral vision. A box cutter. The blade was extended, catching the dim kitchen light. He didn't press it against me. He just let it hover there, close enough that I could feel the faint disturbance of air when he moved it. The chat exploded. Do it slow. Don't rush. Let him watch. The black flip phone buzzed again on the counter. He reached over me, picked it up, and held it so I could see the new message. It was a photo. Nathan again. But this time, he wasn't in the chair. He was lying on the floor, curled on his side, with one arm stretched toward the camera. His mouth was uncovered now. His lips were moving. The image was blurry, like it had been taken mid-word. The caption under the photo read, "Say goodbye before you see this in person." The man put the phone down, then stepped away from me without a word. He walked toward my apartment door, pulled the chair aside like it weighed nothing, and unlocked it. He didn't leave right away. He opened the door just wide enough for me to see the hallway, and the box sitting there, smaller than the last one, same duct tape seal. He placed it gently inside my apartment, shut the door behind him, and I heard his footsteps fade down the hall. For a long time, I didn't touch the box. I just stared at it from the other side of the room, convinced it was a trap. Eventually, my shaking got worse than my fear, and I crawled toward it on my knees. When I peeled the tape away, there was no newspaper this time. Inside was a single object, a Polaroid camera. Fresh film was already loaded. There was a folded note taped to the back. I unfolded it with numb fingers. Your turn. The flip phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a video or a photo. It was a single line of text. Window. Now. I stood up slowly, every muscle in my body aching with tension, and walked to the blinds. Down on the street, directly across from my building, stood the man, his face tilted upward, staring straight at my window. His mouth moved, and even from this distance, I could see what he was saying. 24. I backed away from the glass, but the flip phone buzzed again. A new video file. I pressed play with trembling hands. It was my apartment, my bedroom, my bed, and lying in my bed, under my blanket, was someone. Not me. Someone else. The camera operator reached out and pulled the blanket back, revealing a body. Their skin was pale, their head turned away from the camera, but the black hoodie with the bleach stain made my blood run cold. It wasn't Nathan, it was me. The video ended with that image of me, or someone wearing my clothes, my skin tone, my hair, lying in my bed like a wax figure. I dropped the flip phone onto the floor. It didn't matter. The thing buzzed again almost instantly, vibrating against the tiles until it spun in a slow circle. A new text. Open the door. I didn't move. Another buzz. Or we come in anyway. The chat on my laptop began to fill with messages, even though the live stream had gone black. He's stalling. Make him do it. 24 won't wait. The air in the apartment felt heavier with every passing second, like the walls were closing in. I could hear faint noises through the door. Not footsteps, not knocking. Breathing. Slow, deep inhalations, as if someone was pressing their face against the crack between the door and frame. I didn't remember standing up, but suddenly I was at the door, my hand hovering over the lock. My brain was screaming at me to run, to grab something heavy, to call for help, but my body felt detached, like I was moving under someone else's control. I unlocked it. The door swung open an inch on its own, the stale hallway air mixing with the faint, metallic scent I'd smelled before. No one stood in the doorway. Instead, there was another box, bigger than the last two, heavier. I pulled it inside, shut the door, and locked it again, pressing my back against it. The cardboard was damp in places, the tape sticking to my fingers. When I tore it open, my stomach lurched. Inside was an old desktop computer tower, scuffed and dented, wires dangling from the back. A piece of masking tape was stuck to the side, and in thick black marker it read, "Plug in. Don't look away." The flip phone buzzed before I could even think. This time it was a call, the screen flashing unknown. I answered. A whisper, so quiet I had to hold the phone against my ear. "You're on in 60 seconds. The line went dead. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hook the tower to my monitor. As soon as the cables clicked in, the screen flared to life with a single window. A live stream feed. Not of my apartment this time. A basement. Concrete floor. Low ceiling. Bare bulb swinging slightly, casting long, uneven shadows. In the center of the frame, Nathan. He was on his knees, hands tied behind his back. His head drooped forward, and I could see his shoulders rise and fall in shallow breaths. There was a strip of duct tape over his mouth, and beneath his bare feet, a dark stain spreading across the concrete. The chat was already filling up. "Wake him. Show him 24. We're ready." Somewhere off-screen, footsteps approached. Slow, measured. The man stepped into view, box cutter in hand, blade glinting under the bulb. But he didn't go to Nathan. He looked directly into the camera, into me, and spoke. "Bring it closer." The screen flickered for a moment, and then my apartment came into frame. My actual apartment, from a new angle. This time, the camera was so close, I could see every twitch in my face. I realized, with a cold jolt, that someone else was in here. I turned around. A figure stood in the corner by my kitchen, holding the Polaroid camera from the last box. They were dressed in black from head to toe, face covered by a plain white mask with no features except 2 eye holes. The mask turned slightly toward me. Then the person raised the camera and clicked the shutter. The photo slid out, and without looking at it, they walked to my desk and held it up to my webcam. On the live stream, the chat exploded. Perfect. He's ready. 24 joins now. The masked figure reached into their pocket and pulled out a small, crumpled envelope. They tossed it at my feet, the sound of paper on tile deafening in the silence. I didn't want to open it, but my hands moved anyway. Inside was a single slip of paper with an address scrawled on it. No city, no zip code, just a street name and a number. And below that, one final instruction. Bring the camera, or he dies. The masked figure stepped toward me, grabbed my wrist, and placed the Polaroid camera in my hand. Their grip was cold, unyielding. Then they walked to my door, opened it, and stood waiting. I don't know why I followed. Maybe I thought I could stop this. Maybe I thought if I saw where Nathan was, I could get him out. We went down the stairs, out the laundromat's side door, and into the alley. A black van waited there, engine idling, back doors open. Inside, the man from the streams sat in the shadows, his empty eyes locked on me. I climbed in. The door slammed shut. The ride felt endless. No streetlights, no turns I recognized, just the low hum of the tires on some back road. The masked figure sat beside me, Polaroid camera in their lap, tapping it with one finger like a metronome. When the van finally stopped, they shoved me out into cold air. We were in front of an old boarded-up warehouse. The address from the envelope was spray-painted on the side in faded black letters. Inside, the smell hit me first. Damp, mold, and something metallic and sharp beneath it all. They led me down a narrow hallway, through a heavy metal door, and into the basement from the live stream. Nathan was still there, still breathing. The man stepped forward and pressed the box cutter into my hand. His fingers curled around mine, guiding them to the handle, like he was teaching me how to hold it. The chat on a nearby monitor went wild. Do it! 24 earns his place. No witnesses. Nathan's eyes locked on mine. He shook his head, tears cutting lines through the dirt on his face. The man leaned in and whispered something only I could hear. There's no 25. I don't remember what happened next. The next thing I knew, I was back in my apartment, alone. The Polaroid camera sat on my kitchen counter, a single undeveloped photo inside. It's still there now. I haven't touched it. Because I know, if I shake it, if I let the image appear, I'll see exactly what I did down there. And I'm not ready to know if Nathan is in that picture, or if it's me. A dark web forum asked me to rate crime scene photos. One was my own kitchen. Alright, I'm posting this because I haven't slept properly in 2 days, and I feel like I need to get it out of my head. I'm not a writer, so don't expect this to be polished, but I swear on my life that every word is true. Last week started out normal. I worked the closing shift at a Starbucks downtown. It's right across from a McDonald's and one of those giant chain bookstores that still smells faintly of printer ink and old coffee. We just had one of those days where every second person was ordering an iced pumpkin spice latte like it was their last meal before the apocalypse. By the time I got home, my feet hurt so bad I could feel my pulse in them. My roommate was gone for the week visiting her parents in Tampa, so I had the apartment to myself, which is normally amazing, except that night it felt too quiet. I'm talking fridge humming, traffic in the distance, could hear a pin drop quiet. My cat Charlie, wasn't helping either. He just sat on the counter, staring at the corner of the kitchen like he was waiting for something to move. I didn't want to go to bed yet, so I did what any normal, sleep-deprived idiot does at 1 a.m. Scrolled TikTok. I ended up on one of those internet iceberg videos. You know, the ones where some guy in a monotone voice says, "Now, level 5 is where it gets disturbing," while ominous stock music plays in the background. Normally, I just watch them for the fun facts, but this one mentioned a place I'd never heard of before. Something called The Garden. Curiosity got the better of me. I went down a rabbit hole of Reddit threads, old forum screenshots, and random YouTube conspiracy videos that had maybe 20 views. The Garden, apparently, was a private deep web community where people rated crime scene photos. Some claimed it was a police training database. Others swore it was a recruitment pipeline for something darker. Here's the thing. I've always been into weird, creepy internet corners. Not gore, not anything like that. Just the mystery of it. The idea that there are parts of the web you're not supposed to see. So I convinced myself that if the Garden was real, it was probably just some edgy roleplay thing. I'm not gonna go into detail about how I found it, partly because I don't want anyone else to be as stupid as I was. But after about an hour of bouncing between encrypted links and dead pages, I ended up staring at a login screen. There was no name, no instructions, just a fox logo in the center of the page. A red fox with its eyes sewn shut and a mouth stitched into a smile. I tried a random username and a throwaway email. It worked. The first page that loaded looked like a stripped down message board. No avatars, no colorful threads, just black text on a gray background. At the top was a pinned post from someone named Caretaker Zero. "Welcome to the Garden. Rate what you see. Earn trust to see more." There were different collections to browse. I started with the public ones. Most of them looked like low-quality photos of abandoned buildings, messy apartments, or busted-up cars. You'd scroll through them and click a number from 1 to 10. People left comments like, "Note the footprint by the window," or "Blood spatter suggests multiple impacts." It was unsettling, but not terrifying. I told myself it was like a creepy scavenger hunt. Maybe even something educational for law enforcement hobbyists. I spent maybe 2 hours rating photos. Then a notification popped up in the corner. "Caretaker Zero has invited you to the private collections." The private section was different. The photos were sharper, more recent looking. The locations weren't dusty old ruins anymore. They were lived-in spaces. A child's bedroom with toys scattered on the floor and a half-finished puzzle on the desk. A dimly lit kitchen with the fridge door hanging open. A parking lot at night with a single shoe lying next to an empty stroller. Some of them made my stomach tighten. They didn't look like old evidence. They looked fresh. Then I got to image number 47. I almost didn't recognize it at first because the lighting was different, but then I noticed the details. The dent in the corner of the fridge door from when I dropped a can of Sprite 2 years ago. The Disneyland magnet my roommate's sister gave us after her honeymoon. The cheap IKEA table with the wobbly leg I'd been meaning to fix. It wasn't a kitchen that looked like mine. It was my kitchen. In the photo, the fridge door was wide open. There was a grocery bag on the counter I didn't remember leaving there. And on the tile floor, partially out of frame, was an arm. The skin was pale, almost gray in the dim light, and the hand was curled like it was gripping something. For a second, I thought I was looking at an old photo, like maybe someone had been in my apartment before I lived here. But then my eyes landed on the timestamp in the corner. It was taken 12 minutes ago. I don't remember clicking off the site. I just remember the sound of my laptop lid slamming shut and my heartbeat pounding in my ears. Charlie had moved from the kitchen counter to under the couch, and his eyes were huge. I didn't go into the kitchen. I didn't move at all. I just sat there, phone in hand, trying to decide if I should call the police or grab my keys and run. Then my phone buzzed. It was an email. No subject line, no text, just a single attachment. It was the same kitchen photo, except now the timestamp read 001. I didn't check the kitchen right away. I sat there frozen for at least a minute after seeing that timestamp change. My phone screen had dimmed, and in the reflection, I could see my own face. Pale, sweating, eyes locked wide. Charlie was still under the couch, but now his tail was puffed up, and I could hear this low, constant growl coming from him. The air in the apartment felt heavier than it had a few minutes ago. That's the only way I can explain it. Like the oxygen was thick, like breathing through wet cloth. I could hear the faint sound of a car passing outside, but it felt far away, muffled. The email was still open. That photo sat on my screen, like it was waiting for me to notice something I'd missed. The more I stared, the more I realized the camera angle was slightly lower than before, like whoever took it had crouched down. The fridge was still wide open, but now I could see the faint reflection of something metallic in the handle. Just a quick, blurry glint, and then my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text message. Unknown number. Do not call anyone. That was it. No punctuation, no emojis, nothing. My brain went into overdrive, fight or flight, except neither felt safe. I live on the 3rd floor of an apartment complex, so if someone was inside, the only way they got in without me noticing was through the front door, which was 10 feet from where I was sitting. I picked up the closest thing I could find, a heavy ceramic mug from the coffee table, and got up slowly. My ears were straining for any sound from the kitchen. Nothing. No footsteps. No breathing. The fridge hum was there, steady, normal, and somehow that made it worse. I took one step toward the kitchen, then another. As soon as I crossed the threshold into the hallway, I smelled it. This faint metallic tang, like a penny pressed against your tongue. Not strong, just there. My mug felt useless in my hand. I rounded the corner, heart hammering so loud it felt like it was shaking my vision. The fridge door was closed. There was no grocery bag on the counter, no arm on the floor. The magnet was still there, the dent still there. Everything looked normal. For a second, I thought maybe I'd had some kind of breakdown. Maybe the photo wasn't real. Then I saw the floor. There was a wet mark, faint but visible in the light from the window. Not a spill, not water from Charlie's bowl. It was shaped like the bottom half of a shoe print, and it was facing away from me, toward the sliding glass door that led to the balcony. The balcony door was open about 3 inches. I don't remember opening it. I don't even remember unlocking it that day. My first instinct was to run and slam it shut, but before I could move, I heard the faintest sound, not from outside, from behind me. It was this tiny, deliberate exhale. I spun around so fast, I nearly slipped on that wet footprint. There was no one there, no shadow, no figure, but I knew someone had been standing right in the hallway with me. My whole body felt like it was buzzing. I backed into the kitchen, eyes darting everywhere. That's when I saw it, wedged between the fridge and the wall, barely sticking out. A phone. Not mine. Older model. No case. Black tape covering the camera. The screen lit up as soon as I touched it. And there, on the lock screen, was the exact same photo of my kitchen. Except this time, the image was still, like a paused video. My hand was shaking so bad I almost dropped it, but I swiped. The image started moving. It was a video. The shot lingered on the fridge for a few seconds, then slowly tilted down toward the floor. The pale arm was still there, but this time it was twitching, fingers spasming like they were trying to grab something. The camera kept lowering until the head came into view. It was my roommate. Her eyes were open but glazed, her face grayish and slack. I could see a smear of something dark along her hairline. She blinked once, very slowly, and her lips moved like she was trying to say something. But before I could make out what it was, a hand appeared in front of the lens. Long fingers, knuckles scraped raw, nails jagged and dirty. They reached toward her face. The video cut to black. My stomach lurched so hard I had to grab the counter. I dropped the phone, and it hit the tile with a clatter. That's when I heard it again. The exhale, longer this time, followed by the faintest sound of bare feet on the hallway carpet. I didn't look back. I bolted to the balcony, shoved the door open, and stumbled outside. My building overlooks the parking lot, and for one split second, I thought I might actually survive this. But then I glanced down. There, leaning against my car, was a man in a dark hoodie. His face was obscured by the shadow of the hood, but I could see his mouth. It was stitched into that same grotesque, sewn-shut smile as the Fox logo on the website. He tilted his head up toward me and raised his phone. It was live streaming. The man in the hoodie didn't move when he saw me on the balcony. He just kept his phone pointed up at me, like he was filming. Even from 3 stories up, I could hear the faint clicking of his tongue. Click, click, click. It was slow, deliberate, and each click lined up perfectly with the faint buzzing vibration in my pocket. My own phone. Notifications. I didn't need to check to know they were from him. My first thought was to scream, but something in my head told me not to. Not because of embarrassment, because I was suddenly certain that if I drew attention, he'd move faster, that he was waiting for me to give him a reason. I backed into the apartment without taking my eyes off him, slid the balcony door shut, and locked it. My breathing was loud, too loud. My hands were slick with sweat, and my legs felt like they were carrying someone else's weight. The hallway between me and the front door looked impossibly long. Every shadow felt thicker. Every corner felt like it was hiding something. I forced myself forward, grabbing my actual phone from my pocket, and dialed 911. The operator answered immediately. Calm, measured voice. I tried to keep my own steady, told her there was someone outside my building filming me, that I thought someone might have broken into my apartment earlier. She asked for my address, my name, and told me officers were on their way. I hung up. 2 minutes later, there was a knock at my door. Not a polite knock. 3 hard, flat pounds. I froze. My phone screen still showed the 911 call had ended less than 120 seconds ago. There was no way anyone could have gotten here that fast. The knock came again, louder. A man's voice followed. Police. Open up. I didn't move. My pulse was so loud, it was drowning out the words. Mom, we got a call about a trespasser. Need to come inside. It didn't sound like the 911 operator. It didn't even sound like any cop I'd ever met. Too casual, too slow, like someone reading lines they'd practiced. My peephole was covered. Something black pressed over it from the outside. Mom, knock. Don't make this difficult. I backed up into the kitchen again, without meaning to. My eyes darted to the phone I'd found wedged by the fridge earlier. It was still lying on the floor. The screen had gone dark. The knocking stopped. For about 5 seconds, there was silence. Then, the sound of my front door handle slowly turning over and over, like someone testing if I'd unlocked it. I grabbed a knife from the block by the sink. It felt like holding a straw. Light. Useless. Then the sound changed. Not jiggling the handle anymore. Now it was a metallic clinking, irregular, like a key being worked into the lock. I bolted for the balcony again, yanking the door open just enough to stick my head out. The man in the hoodie was gone. The parking lot was empty. And then, from behind me, the front door clicked open. Not slammed, not kicked. Just opened. I didn't breathe. I didn't move. I could hear footsteps now. Slow, soft, deliberate. Carpet, then tile. The sound of shoes squeaking faintly when they shifted weight. Mom? The same voice, but closer. Inside. I tried to force my body to move, but it felt like my muscles had been filled with cement. My ears were straining so hard, I could hear my own pulse in my jaw. The footsteps stopped. Then, an entirely different sound. A wet dragging. Something heavy being pulled along the floor, catching on the tile with a dull scrape. I didn't need to see it to know what it was. I thought about the pale arm in the photo, the twitching fingers, the slow blink. I clamped a hand over my mouth and backed toward the corner of the balcony, knife still in the other hand. The dragging sound got closer, then stopped, and then, from the living room, click, click, click. The same sound the man in the hoodie made. Only this time, it wasn't coming from outside. I edged toward the sliding door, ready to climb over the railing if I had to, when my phone buzzed in my pocket. I almost dropped it trying to pull it out, but when I saw the screen, my stomach turned to ice. It was a live video link. The thumbnail was black at first, then flickered. I tapped it. The feed opened, and I saw my own living room. From my kitchen counter, the camera tilted, slow, careful, until I could see myself standing on the balcony, holding the knife. My own terrified face, my own shaking hands. Then the feed shifted down. Someone was crawling toward the balcony door on all fours. Not the man in the hoodie. Someone else. Skin so pale it almost glowed in the light. Thin. Knees and elbows jutted at sharp angles, moving with this slow, jerky rhythm, like they weren't used to their own body. They reached the balcony door, pressed their face to the glass, and smiled. Their lips were sewn shut. The face against the glass didn't blink. It just stayed there, eyes wide and locked on mine, lips straining against black stitches like they wanted to tear open. The skin around the threads was raw, cracked. Whoever they were, they'd been like that for a long time. They didn't breathe like a normal person. It was shallow, fast, almost panting, and I could see the faint fog of it on the glass, even though my balcony was freezing. My fingers tightened around the knife until my knuckles hurt, but it still felt like holding a toy against something that wasn't afraid to bleed. Then they tilted their head. Slow. Deliberate. The stitches tugged. I heard one of the threads snap, the faint pop of it breaking against skin. I stepped back so fast, I almost tripped over my own feet. The balcony was too small, nowhere to run except over the railing. I glanced down. 3 stories wasn't a lethal fall, but it would hurt enough that I might not get up fast. The glass rattled, just a little, enough to make me realize they weren't just watching anymore. I looked back inside. The apartment was darker now. I don't know if it was my eyes adjusting or if the lights had actually dimmed, but the shadows in the hallway looked thicker, like they'd been poured there. No sound, no movement from the one pretending to be police. Then, a scrape against metal behind me. I whipped my head toward the railing just in time to see a hand hook over it. Not pale like the one at the glass. This one was large, veiny, covered in grime like it had been dragging through dirt. Fingers curled, nails chipped and dark underneath. The hoodie man was climbing up. He moved too smoothly for someone scaling a 3-story drop, pulling himself over like he'd done it 100 times. As soon as his head cleared the railing, I saw the mask, not just sewn shut, but patched with pieces of what looked like leather, mismatched shades, rough stitching, holding it together like a quilt made from things that shouldn't be sewn. He didn't look at me at first. He looked past me, toward the glass, where the stitched lips thing was still pressed. Then he chuckled, a low, rasping sound that felt too close, even though he was still a few feet away. My brain stopped thinking in words. It was just movement now. My hands, my legs, the pounding of my heart telling me to go. I turned, kicked the sliding door's latch up, and shoved it open. The thing on the other side stumbled forward from the sudden motion, catching itself on the frame, with arms that bent too sharply at the elbows. I didn't wait for it to stand. I drove the knife forward, not deep. The blade hit something hard, bone maybe, but enough to make them reel back with this muffled animal noise. I slipped inside, slamming the door shut again, locking it without even looking. The sound of nails, actual nails, not fingertips, scraping across the glass, followed me as I bolted for the front door. The dragging sound in the living room was gone. Too gone. I didn't see the man from earlier. I didn't see my roommate. But the carpet was wet in patches, and each patch was dark. I reached the door, fingers scrambling for the lock, and froze. The deadbolt was gone, not unlocked. Gone. Just an empty hole where it had been. Before I could react, the door creaked open an inch. A single, pale hand slid through the gap and tapped the inside of the frame. Once, twice, 3 times. The rhythm was deliberate. Then the hand withdrew. Silence. I didn't want to know where they'd gone. I just ran for the kitchen, thinking maybe I could get to the fire escape through the window over the sink. I yanked it up, but it barely moved. The frame was jammed. My nails scraped against the old paint trying to force it. A shadow fell across the counter. I looked up. The hooded man was crouched on the other side of the window. His mask was closer now, close enough that I could see the frayed edges where leather met skin. His eyes were just holes, deep, dark hollows that didn't reflect light. He didn't try to open the window. He just leaned forward, put one hand flat against the glass, and in the other held a phone. My phone. The screen was on. It was playing a live feed of my bedroom. I hadn't been in my bedroom since I got home. In the feed, Something was lying on my bed, a shape under the blanket, perfectly still. Then the blanket shifted. Something underneath it started to rise. Slow, unnatural, like it wasn't using its hands or feet, but just lifting. I could see the indentation of a face forming against the fabric, pressing up until the outline of a nose and mouth were visible. Except the mouth wasn't closed. It was wide open, too wide. I stumbled back from the counter, knocking over a glass that shattered against the tile. When I looked at the window again, the hoodie man was gone. So was my phone. And from down the hallway, toward my bedroom, came the sound of fabric tearing. The sound of fabric tearing from my bedroom wasn't quick or frantic. It was slow, like someone deliberately unzipping skin. Each rip was followed by a pause, and in that pause, I could hear faint breathing, not panicked, not rushed, just steady, measured, and far too close. I didn't go toward it. My body refused. My legs carried me sideways, toward the bathroom. It was the only room in the apartment with a lock that wasn't already compromised. I slipped inside, slammed the door, and turned the latch until it clicked. The bathroom light was too bright. Every reflection in the mirror looked wrong, not distorted, but slightly delayed, like the movements were a fraction of a second behind. I tried not to look, focusing instead on the tiny window above the shower. It was barely big enough for me to fit through, but I didn't care. I shoved the curtain aside and climbed into the tub to reach it. My fingers curled around the handle, ready to push it open, and froze. On the other side of the glass, inches from my face, someone was watching. Not the hoodie man, not the stitched lips thing. This one's skin was almost translucent, veins branching out under the surface like blue cracks in porcelain. Their eyes were pure white, no iris, no pupil, but they tracked my every movement. They didn't knock. They didn't move. They just leaned forward until their forehead pressed against the glass, and a thin crack spread outward from the point of contact. The lock on the bathroom door rattled. Once, twice, then harder. The pale face outside the window smiled, and I realized there were no teeth, just a smooth gum-like surface stretching the smile too wide. The lock snapped. I didn't think. I dropped out of the tub, yanked open the cabinet under the sink, and crawled inside, pulling the door shut behind me. Everything went dark, except for the thin slivers of light through the crack in the door. My knees pressed against pipes, my breath loud in the tiny space. Footsteps padded into the bathroom, bare feet, slow. They stopped in front of the cabinet. I could see them through the gap, pale, bony, toes curling slightly against the tile. A hand reached down, fingers brushing the door. The nails were long, not sharp, but thick and yellowed. They tapped twice, softly, and the sound made my stomach knot. Then the voice came. Smile for the garden. It wasn't loud. It wasn't even threatening in tone, but it was the exact voice I'd heard when I first opened the deep web forum. Calm, measured, familiar now. Something small slid under the cabinet door. I didn't want to touch it, but I couldn't stop myself from looking. It was a photograph, printed on thick, glossy paper. My bathroom, right now. A grainy shot from above, showing me crouched inside the cabinet, eyes wide, mouth slightly open. The photo had a timestamp, 30 seconds into the future. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. My hands were shaking so hard the photo crinkled. Then, from somewhere else in the apartment, a sound erupted, a shrill piercing alarm tone, like an old fire drill bell. The bare feet turned toward it and walked away. I didn't wait to find out why. I shoved the cabin door open, ran for the front door without looking at anything around me, and sprinted into the hallway outside. The building was silent. No neighbors opening their doors, no TV sounds through the walls, just the low hum of the overhead lights. The elevator at the end of the hall was open. Inside stood two men in police uniforms. Relief almost knocked me over. I ran toward them, already stammering out my story. They're in my apartment. There's more than one. They have my phone. They didn't move, didn't react. When I got close enough to see their faces, my words died. Their mouths were sewn shut. Both of them raised their arms in perfect sync, each holding an old-fashioned Polaroid camera. The flashes went off almost simultaneously. For a second, I couldn't see. The afterimage of the flashes burned into my vision. When it faded, they were gone. The elevator was empty. On the floor in front of it were two Polaroid photos. I picked them up without meaning to. The first was of me, standing in the hallway just now, mouth open mid-sentence. The second was of my apartment. The kitchen, the fridge, the pale arm on the floor. Only this time, the head was in frame. It was me. I don't remember dropping the photos. I just remember running down the stairs, bursting out into the cold night air, and finding the parking lot empty. My car was gone. There was only one vehicle, a white van parked crooked near the dumpster. The back doors were open. Inside, lit by a single hanging bulb, were dozens of photographs taped to the walls. All of them were of me. Some were from tonight. Some were from days I didn't even remember. Me leaving work, me at the grocery store, me asleep in my bed, and one in the very center, larger than the rest. A photo of me, right now, standing in front of the van, staring inside. A voice behind me whispered, "Smile." The bulb inside the van flickered once, then went out.